Dollar General alone now operates more locations than McDonald's, Starbucks, and Walmart combined. Add in Dollar Tree and Family Dollar, and you are looking at roughly 38,000 dollar stores blanketing the United States. That is more dollar stores than there are public libraries in this entire country. The real mechanics of this empire involve specific unit economics and behavioral psychology designed to make customers feel like they are saving money while they are mathematically losing it. Understanding how this works requires destroying the baseline assumption built into the name. You walk into a building with dollar on the sign and assume mathematically that you are getting the lowest possible price per item. The branding is literal for the transaction, but in many cases it is a lie for the value. Once you look at the actual math, the dollar store can be the most expensive place to buy a product, not the cheapest. Dollar stores do not primarily compete by lowering the cost of the goods they sell. They compete by shrinking the physical size of the product until the sticker price hits a number that feels psychologically safe. This chart shows the sticker price for chicken breast. Looking at the shelf tag, the dollar store appears to be 40% cheaper than its nearest competitor. But when we adjust for the actual weight, the price per pound, the dollar store chicken costs $4.98. That is 52% more expensive than the competitor, and functionally the same price per pound as the same cut at Whole Foods. We see the same strategy with household staples. A 6-pack of 3.17-ounce soap bars for $8 at a dollar chain versus an 8-pack of larger 3.75-ounce bars for $10.99 at Target. Take a second to find the better deal. When you calculate the price per ounce, Target is actually 5 cents cheaper than the dollar store. Multiply that 5-cent gap across every soap, snack, and cleaning supply a low-income family buys in a month, and a meaningful chunk of a grocery budget evaporates, specifically because the shopper trusted the word dollar. This trick works because human beings are wired to avoid cognitive friction. A price tag of $10.99 is large enough to trigger hesitation and comparison shopping. Behavioral economists call this anchoring bias. When the brain sees a $1 tag, it locks on to that single digit as a safe transaction. It slides through our logic filter effortlessly, while larger numbers create friction that forces us to think. It is the same logic as a restaurant selling an $8 burger that turns out to be a tiny slider. You didn't get a deal on a meal. You got a smaller portion priced to look like a bargain compared to the $14 burger next door. By removing the mental pain of spending a large number, the store isn't selling value, it is selling the feeling of saving money. A common objection is that these stores provide access to food in underserved areas that big grocery chains have abandoned. Residents in these neighborhoods often perceive dollar stores as a vital lifeline. However, data from UCLA and the University of Toronto reveals a pattern called market displacement. Their research found that for roughly every 3 dollar stores that opened in a neighborhood, that neighborhood lost 1 independent grocery store. Once that grocery store closes, food access actually decreases. The average travel distance to reach a full-service grocer increases from 2 miles to nearly 2.9 miles. This displacement leads to a 4 to 7.4% drop in fresh produce purchases in these neighborhoods, with the steepest decline hitting the lower-income households that dollar stores target. In many documented cases, the dollar store isn't filling a gap. It is creating the gap by making it impossible for a real grocery store to survive in its vicinity. This empire operates by masking unit costs behind low sticker prices, leaning into the brain's anchoring bias and driving market displacement. Beyond a shelf math, the profitability of this model is even more striking. A $16 average shopping basket at a dollar store can generate more raw profit than a $45 basket at Walmart. In Part 2, we're investigating the corporate machinery that makes this possible, from luxury-level gross margins and skeleton crew labor models to the federal investigation into a rat-infested warehouse. The math on the chicken and the soap was just the beginning. The real story is how this company built a multi-billion-dollar empire on the science of the small transaction. This diagram compares the average shopping trip at 2 major retailers. On the left, a typical Walmart customer rings up about $45 per visit. On the right, the average Dollar General customer spends a much smaller $16. Basic arithmetic suggests the much larger $45 transaction yields far more raw profit for the store. A bigger basket usually guarantees a bigger payout. But when we overlay the actual profit generated by each of these baskets, the math inverts. Dollar General captures roughly $5.12 in gross profit on its tiny transaction. That beats Walmart's raw profit by $1.14 per trip. This chart showing percentage gross margins explains how they pull that off. Notice the massive gap between traditional grocers and the dollar chains. Walmart operates at around 24%, and Kroger sits down near 21%. Meanwhile, Dollar General and Dollar Tree run margins up around 31.5%. So, how does a retailer extract that much excess margin from a customer base desperate for a deep discount? A gap like that requires deliberate engineering. It relies on a three-pillar corporate design, built strictly to maximize wealth extraction from every single aisle. The first pillar is the package size engine. Dollar stores partner directly with national manufacturers to create custom, miniature versions of everyday items, pricing them specifically to hit a $1 or $2 target. Shrinking the product does not proportionally shrink the cost of the plastic, labeling, or shipping. Because those production costs remain relatively flat, selling a smaller volume of soap at a lower sticker price drastically increases the margin percentage per square inch of shelf space. Both the retailer and the manufacturer win. The second pillar targets the payroll. Walk into a typical location and you will likely see a skeleton crew of just 2 or 3 employees on shift, generally earning less than $15 an hour. That ultra-low labor footprint is practically invisible to a shopper looking at price tags. They pair that minimal staff with a bare-bones physical footprint. The stores average around 7,300 square feet, and historically completely skip the massive expense of installing and maintaining complex refrigeration infrastructure. The third pillar takes those cheap, tiny boxes and clusters them together in a strategy called market saturation. The corporate playbook involves intentionally placing 2 or 3 locations within a few miles of each other to completely dominate a single region's retail traffic. When a single dollar store moves in, nearby independent grocery stores see their sales drop by a reliable 30%. A traditional grocer needs high volume and dense foot traffic to support its fresh produce sections, creating an arms race the local market was never built to survive. By combining miniature packaging, skeleton crews, and overwhelming real estate saturation, dollar stores operate with practically zero overhead. They can comfortably starve out the local competition until they remain the absolute only option for daily household goods. But running a massive retail empire on virtually zero overhead leaves almost no room for error, a reality exposed by the 2022 Family Dollar case study. Federal inspectors discovered a severe rodent infestation inside a major Family Dollar distribution warehouse. The scale of the health violation was severe enough to trigger a $40 million fine issued by the Department of Justice. Instead of simply absorbing the fine and cleaning the facility, the structural fragility of the company gave way. Confronted with a mix of shoplifting losses, rising inflation, and basic operating costs, leadership announced they would permanently close around 1,000 stores. Those sudden closures hit vulnerable, low-income communities the hardest. Many shuttered locations served neighborhoods heavily reliant on EBT and SNAP benefits, especially after post-pandemic reductions left families with less money for groceries each month. This completes a devastating cycle researchers call a food mirage. First, the aggressive dollar store saturation forces the independent neighborhood grocer to shut down. Then, when the dollar store faces its own internal cost pressures, it abandons the neighborhood entirely. A density model optimized entirely for margin extraction eventually collapses under its own weight. The corporate spreadsheet survives, but the physical communities are left stranded in a retail void with absolutely no local access to basic necessities. Highly successful businesses rarely offer you the best objective deal. Instead, they engineer the psychological feeling of a bargain to bypass your logical filters. Your first defense is aggressive unit math. Before putting anything in your cart, divide the sticker price by the total ounces or item count. Compare that raw rate, not the bright whole number on the tag, against other stores. Second, actively defeat your own anchoring bias. Your brain automatically assumes a low number like $1 is safe. Override that instinct by forcing a 3-second pause to check the actual package weight before making a decision. Third, be highly strategic about where you buy different goods. purchase heavy staples at wholesale clubs or big box stores, and save the local discount shop strictly for low-stakes, one-time use items like party supplies or cheap hardware. This high-margin extraction model relies on the assumption that most customers won't bother with the division. Switching on your analytical brain breaks the illusion instantly. The final defensive step moves from the shopping aisle into the city council chambers. Communities possess actual leverage over corporate real estate. Municipalities across the country are utilizing documented policy tools like local density limits and strict zoning moratoriums. These laws physically block the saturation playbook by preventing chains from clustering locations on the same street. You have the power to stop handing hard-earned wages over to a margin structure that relies entirely on visual deceit. Doing the division ensures your money stays with you, instead of funding a margin structure built purely to extract it. Billion-dollar behavioral engineering is a calculated system, but it fractures against simple, invisible financial habits applied at scale. Margin